Hi, everyone. I'm Rena Nine, and thank you for joining us. We begin with a very busy day in Washington. President Donald Trump will take questions alongside the Swedish Prime Minister today at the White House. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers are holding a series of meetings on everything from world threats to infrastructure. This all comes as the president is at odds with members of his own party over his proposal to impose new tariffs. The plan would set a 25% tariff and a 10% tariff on aluminum. The 25% is on steel. The president remains firm on those numbers, but has indicated that he's willing to compromise if it leads to a more fair NAFTA deal. Well, today, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin suggested that the tariffs would not apply to Mexico or Canada, depending on the trade deal negotiations. At the same time, Republican congressional leaders are concerned that the tariffs would jeopardize gains made with their tax plan.
There is clearly abuse occurring. Clearly, there is overcapacity, dumping, and transshipping of steel and aluminum by some countries, particularly China. But I think the smarter way to go is to make it more surgical and more targeted.
Mr. Speaker, any sense that you're making headway with the president on this issue?
I'm not going to go into our private conversations. We've had multiple conversations about this. He knows our view. Every now and then, we're just going to have a different approach on how we should tackle these problems. But it should be acknowledged that there is a problem that needs to be addressed here. We just want to make sure that it's done in a prudent way that's more surgical so we can limit unintended consequences.
Jake Sherman is a senior writer for Politico and co-author of Politico's playbook. Okay, Jake, so what does it say? The president on one side, Speaker Paul Ryan on the other. What do you make of their relationship at this point if Trump just says, okay, forget about it? Speaker's not going to urge to follow through on this plan with tariffs altogether.
I mean, it's a fascinating moment if you really think about it in the global scale of the Trump presidency. He is butting up against the Speaker of the House, the man who delivered him his tax bill, which is arguably his only, or at worst, his best legislative achievement. This is something that is completely against what many, if almost all House Republicans believe, and Republicans in the Senate as well, these tariffs, which is why they've not been done and why they've not been allowed for legislatively. But we're going to get a real test here of Paul Ryan and Kevin Brady, the man who wrote the tax bill, their influence with the president. Because if the president does nothing and goes ahead and slaps these tariffs on aluminum and steel, it will show that Republicans on Capitol Hill have limited, if any, influence when it comes to economic policy and the kind of Make America First, Make America Great Again agenda that the president has been pushing.
Jake, what's the mood on Capitol Hill? Do you get a sense from Republicans? Do they feel more and more emboldened to break rank and not follow through on the president's policies?
I think that the main objective right now is we're in March. We are 8 months away from a midterm election that will see Republicans kind of running for the hills on many fronts, a very difficult political environment, even if the president had high approval ratings. So I think the main thing driving Republicans' kind of political and policy thinking at this point is getting reelected. And I think each member of Congress is going to kind of make their own judgment about what's best for them when it comes to this tariff situation. And Paul Ryan could put something on the floor, put a piece of legislation on the floor that would make it difficult for President Trump to do this. We'll see if he does that. Top advisors to the speaker are privately very doubtful that he will do that.
Okay. I want to switch gears for a moment, Jake, and ask you about this breakthrough between North and South Korea. The South Korean official says that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has expressed willingness to discuss nuclear disarmament. The president tweeted about it today. We know that there's going to be a summit next month between the two countries. What should we be looking for with that?
We should be looking from an American perspective how involved the American government is. Now, they say these are talks between the South Koreans and the North Koreans. Many analysts, and I think this is the interesting point from our point of view on Capitol Hill and from the American political system, is many people are saying that this is because of Donald Trump's, kind of inability or unwillingness to be predictable when it comes to these negotiations. He's been unconventional in dealing with the Korean Peninsula, has raised the prospect of going to war with North Korea, and many people say that's what brought North Korea to the table. Now, this has happened in the past. North Koreans have started negotiations in the past. They have talked to the South Koreans, talked to the Americans before, and nothing has come of those talks. So I think many people are still skeptical that there will be fruit from these negotiations, but it's an interesting development nonetheless.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting, but some people wonder if this is just sort of a game to sort of continuing on with their plan of developing these weapons. I want to ask you, Jake, about what the director of national intelligence said when he reacted to North Korea's overtures today. This was at a hearing on Capitol Hill. I want to play a bite for you from that.
North Korea has to agree to not possess nuclear capability. And until that happens, we cannot have an agreement with them. And that is our position. And so we'll see what happens here. Maybe this is a breakthrough. I seriously doubt it. But like I said, hope springs eternal.
Hope springs eternal. He didn't sound too confident there, Jake.
I think that's because America and South Korea and Japan and in the region there are still military exercises, there is still military cooperation, and if you kind of read between the lines at what North Korea is saying is they will give up nuclear weapons if there's no military threat. That's a very kind of broad and loose way to approach negotiating. If there are no military threats toward North Korea, that's something that I can't imagine is realistic for the United States to guarantee that there will be zero military threat toward North Korea. So I think that's why many, including many in the Trump administration who are talking privately and now publicly about this, many are skeptical that this is a true breakthrough.
So, Jake, is there a sense on Capitol Hill that war could be coming? What are you hearing on North Korea?
I don't think anyone thinks war could be coming, but I don't think a lot of people think there's been a lot of movement toward a kind of overarching and lasting sense of stability on the Korean Peninsula. A lot of people believe this is just a result of a successful Olympics in which the North Koreans were involved and just increasing communication between the North and South Koreans. And I don't get the sense from many members of Congress that this is going to be a lasting sense of stability.
I want to turn now to the Mueller investigation. We know that former Trump campaign aide Sam Nunberg went on big media blitz yesterday. He was saying how he wasn't going to comply with the special counsel's subpoena to go before a grand jury and to actually turn over these documents. At the end of the day, though, he was saying that he might comply. He changed his tune a bit. Break this down for us. What might have sort of played into all of this?
It's difficult to know what his motivations were, and he's certainly not let on what he was thinking in his kind of 6 hours of media interviews across cable networks and with print outlets. I will say this, a lot of people that are around the investigation and that are in the White House think it's unwise not to cooperate with Bob Mueller's investigation. Nunberg has received a subpoena. He allegedly has some sort of legal counsel. Whether that's staying or not, we don't have any sense. But Mueller, if he has shown no hesitancy to arrest people and to throw charges out there. So I think Nunberg is getting wise. It seems like Nunberg is getting wise to that fact. And what he said was kind of curious. He said he didn't believe that what Mueller was doing was fair. He does not like Donald Trump, but he doesn't want to take the 50 to 80 hours it would take to produce the emails that Mueller wants. Now, a subpoena is not really a light ask. It's not a favor. This is a man who is empowered with subpoena power, who's able to bring charges against individuals, who's asking Nunberg, who worked for Donald Trump for many years, was peripherally involved in the campaign, to produce documents. This is not a favor that Mueller's asking. This is something that he's demanding, and I think Nunberg seems to be getting wise to that. But it's very difficult to discern, and I'm not a fortune teller, so I don't want to guess, but it's difficult to discern what his intentions were, and he has certainly not made those clear publicly.
Jake, before you go, I want to ask you about the Office of the Special Counsel said today that Kellyanne Conway violated the Hatch Act with 2 interviews where she discussed the Alabama special election. The OSC, the special office there, submitted their report to the president for disciplinary action. What do you think the White House, but the White House actually said that Kellyanne Conway didn't do anything wrong. How do you see this playing out at this point?
You can't imagine that the president's going to discipline Kellyanne Conway, who has been perhaps one of the most loyal people to the president of the United States, has been with him for a very long time and has survived in the White House when many others haven't. So I think it's a bump in the road. People need to be more careful in the White House if they want to avoid these kinds of narratives that they're politicking on government time. I don't expect there to be any fallout from this.
Jake Sherman with Politico. Thank you for joining us, Jake.
Thank you.